Dr. Alyson Payne. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Okay, so today we're going to go over Chapter 19, German Composers of the Late Baroque, focusing on J.S. Bach and George Friedrich Handel. Okay, so who were the main patrons of this era? Who would employ Bach and Handel? Church? Yes, I heard it. The church. Excellent. The church, both the New Lutheran Church, because we have the Reformation around the early 1500s. Now we've got a different variety, and the Catholic Church. So both, the church was one of the main patrons. And anybody else who would have enough money to employ composers? The court. Excellent. The aristocracy. Yes. An example, we have King Frederick II, Frederick the Great. I think that's really amazing. I wish, my name's pretty cool, Dr. Payne, but I mean to have to be called the Great, to get up and be like, hey Frederick, no, it's Frederick the Great, or Anton the Magnificent, which really hype. So, and he was the King of Prussia, and he sponsored music, but he also played it himself. He was also an amateur musician because this made him seem more cultured. And also, now that we're moving forward in time, there's a new source of musical support, which is the public, or the middle class. The middle class has been growing, getting more money to spend on leisure activities, and so the public, for the first time, begins to patronize music. Okay, here we go. So this is from your textbook, figure 19.1. And here, as I mentioned, we have Frederick the Great. He's playing the flute there. And at the harpsichord is one of Bach's kids, C.P.E. Bach, who you meet later. Bach had a number of children, and two of them went on to become famous composers, C.P.E. and J.C. Bach, which is, we call him the London Bach, because he lived in London. But C.P.E. worked for Frederick the Great. Okay. So, we're going to talk about Johann Sebastian Bach. There are his dates. I don't think you need to memorize dates. Okay, good. But yeah, know that he lived at the end of the Baroque. Here's a short bio of him. He's a composer, organ virtuoso. He composed in every genre except opera. Now, some of his cantatas are sort of operatic, but he never wrote an actual, what we would call an opera. Some hallmarks of his style are counterpoint. He's got a very complex contrapuntal style. And after his death, his music fell out of favor among the general public. It was considered too complicated in an era where they preferred the more simpler style. So the general public didn't really like Bach's music after he died. It kind of was not played a lot. But his music, composers knew his music, connoisseurs still knew his music, and exerted a powerful influence over composers such as Mozart and Beethoven knew who Bach was and studied his scores. And later, his music experienced a renewed popularity in the mid-19th century. So beginning around 1820 to 1850, people started programming his music and playing it again, especially Felix Mendelssohn, and Bach became revived and grew to J.S. Bach, as we know him today, the great composer. Okay. And like I said, I see some of you scribbling furiously. This PowerPoint will be online, so you don't have to worry about getting everything down. And it's also in the text, Chapter 19. Okay, here's some more about Bach, just to, sometimes the historical facts are very cold, but this is a glimpse into the personality. Albert Schweitzer is a Bach scholar, important one, and this is from him. He says, his irritability and stubborn belief that he was always in the right can neither be excused nor glossed over. So overall, Bach, he valued hard work and he had a frank manner. If he thought he was right, he would tell you, and he almost always thought he was right when it came to music. So he was an interesting character. There's also a legend about Bach. Scholars have debated if it's true or not. But there was a legend about Bach that he would sometimes go into a church disguised as a poor village schoolmaster. and asked the organist to be allowed to play a chorale, merely to enjoy the astonishment his playing created among the company, or to hear the organist say, "It must either be Bach or the devil." So he would go in, dressed in his shabby clothes, and be like, "Oh, I'm just a poor village schoolmaster, and could I play your lovely organ?" And they'd be like, "Oh, okay." And then he'd sit down and be like, "Yes," you know, and bust out this virtuosic masterpiece, and people would be like, "Oh my God, it's Bach." And then he'd enjoy that, and then he'd laugh. Whether or not this is actually quite how it happened is another story, but it's a common Bach legend people like to tell. So here's a brief chronology of his life. Okay, so that was Bach, and now can you handle it? It's time for handle. Sorry, I just say there's a lot of Dr. Payne's left shack. Okay, so this is a portrait of Handel by Philippe Mercier around 1730. Handel, born in the same year as Bach, 1685, and died 9 years later. Let's pretend that we didn't know that this was Handel. What would you say, if you looked at this painting, what were some things you could infer about the man in this painting?
Mysterious.
Mysterious, he has a headache, right? He looks like, you know, sometimes we all do when we've got a deadline. Hungover. That's a new one.
Hard at work.
Maybe
Hard at work, yes. He's doing the traditional composer pose by the piano. But yeah, you can
More
see
humanistic in its portrayal and shape.
more humanistic. Yeah, he looks, like you said, you can see he's tired. You know, it's not sort of a glorified image. And what could you infer about what he does? He's a musician, right? He writes music, and we can tell that because, yes, it's almost like we just interrupted him. Just, oh, I didn't see you there.
I have to get back to work.
Yes, back to work. He's hard at work, and you can see the piano behind him. Well, I guess that'd be a harpsichord. What about his hair? Is that in fashion?
he lost his wig.
He lost his wig, right? If he was,
He's a bit of a lawyer.
yeah, if he was. So what does that tell you about his financial status? Is he like poor? Is he middle? Or is he like high class? Yeah, poor to middle, probably middle class. I mean, he can afford to sit for a portrait, so obviously he's got some money. But yet, as you can see, you know, his clothes, they're nice, but they're not ornate. And as you're right, he's not wearing his wig. Wigs were really nasty. You got lice and they smelled. And it was, yeah, before, you know, this era, things were stinky. It was just stinky. Okay, so we've talked about what kind of guy we think this person is. So let's move forward in time. Let's see how Handel does. Okay, so this is, let's see,
Boom.
a couple of decades later, boom. So what can we tell? If we didn't, again, know this was Handel, what could we say about this rich, wealthy,
Got happier.
Put on some weight.
happier, put on some weight, yes,
He's been eating.
he's been eating well, he's,
He takes that interesting.
yes, he's
He's no more the starving musician.
yes, he's no longer the starving musician. We can see he's gotten a little portlier.
His posture is more upright.
His posture is more upright, right? He's not just sort of like, you know.
Before the carriage crash.
Yeah, and he's got, what about his hair? He has a wig. He can afford to be in fashion, de moda.
His outfit's also more like intricate, so you know,
Yes.
the first one was just kind of plain, this one has all the different buttons and
Yeah, he's got a lot of
design.
brocade. He can afford. He's come up in the world. Is he working at the piano? Is he hard at work writing those 58 cantatas? Well, he didn't have to do that, but is he hard at work turning out music?
After reading his review from last night's opera.
Ah, yes, perhaps yes. So he's still a musician. It's still obvious that he's a musician. But yeah, we don't see him at work engaged in the craft. We see him in his glory here. Okay, and that's Thomas Hudson. Does anyone know who Thomas Hudson was? Some of he's a famous English painter, so he's a more famous. Well, Mercier was pretty famous, but Hudson is more well known, so he's got a better painter. Let's see. Now here's another one by Hudson, just a little bit closer to his death. So what can we say about this handle?
It's a little weird. That's a little weary.
He's got a limp, he's got a cane.
Yes, he's got a cane. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he died in 1759. So I can't. So
He's blind in one eye.
yeah, he is losing his sight by now. But yeah, he's still. It's similar to the other picture. He's got his wig. He's dressed very regally. He's seated, and you can't tell it very well, but this is the score here to the Messiah. So he's already found fame as the Messiah, his most well-known piece that continued to live on after his death. And he's also, I like in this one that you can see his surroundings. He's got a nice balcony, and he's in a very regal state. And this is the last one. This is the Handel Memorial at Westminster Abbey, which is the great cathedral in London. And so what can we infer about this? What would you say? What has happened to Handel now?
He was an influential composer.
Right, he's influential. I mean, if they took the time to carve a giant statue of him and put it in a place of honor, they obviously, he's won respect. He's a superstar now. And anything else? Can anyone see what score he's writing on, or behind him? Messiah, right. That is his, like it or not, that is his greatest hit. And he will be known as the composer of the Messiah. And he's writing there, we've caught him writing, I know that my Redeemer liveth, from the Messiah. And so yes, so Handel, as we can see in the artwork, he went from sort of middle-class working musician to all the way to the status of national hero and icon, enshrined forever in marble in Westminster Abbey. If you ever go there, it's really cool. Oh, you've been there? Yeah, it's really amazing to see that. Not only Handel, but all the other statues. Okay, so that's a little bit, that's Handel's biography in pictures. Middle-class musician, gets more famous, gets more rich, and finally ascends to be a national hero. So based on what we sort of briefly went over about Bach's biography, how does that compare to Johann Sebastian Bach?
Bach lost popularity, and his music was complicated and not as popular as Handel's was. His music always remained popular and still does today as well. So.
Yes, that's a great, you've hit it right on the nose. That's a very astute observation. Whereas Handel experienced success and just more success, and then after his death was raised up to a position of icon. Bach, after his death, faded into obscurity by the general public. There weren't any Bach monuments after his death. I mean, now he's very important and well known, but that was only due to the revival starting in the 1820s. From that, and then he gained that status. Good. Okay, so here's a brief